Hello, my name is Ortez, and welcome to Ensure Your Success podcast, where we have real conversations about entrepreneurship. And what is this podcast all about? This podcast is about the stories of individuals who have accepted the call of entrepreneurship to come on to share their stories about their lessons, their trials, their setback, and their successes on their way to becoming successful business owners. And this is raw and uncut. It's not scripted. We just gonna have some real conversations. So I'm excited for this podcast. As you can see, for those who may follow me on YouTube, I have a different background here. And I'm going to encourage you to follow me on YouTube if you're listening to me maybe on some other type of platform. Now, my YouTube videos are mainly for insurance agents, but if you're an entrepreneur, you can learn a lot from them too as well. But the podcast is really about entrepreneurship from people from all walks of life and different type of businesses that they may run or operate. And so today, to kick off this podcast, the first person that's going to share their story is no other than me. I'm going to start off and kick this podcast off with sharing my story. And by the way, if you're ever in Atlanta and you need some good tea, it's a lot of coffee places out there, but I like tea. I'm a tea drinker. Jada Shea. And hopefully I'm saying that right. Shout out to Jada Shea, a good cup of tea in the Atlanta area on Fayetteville Road. So if you're a tea drinker like me, check them out if you're in the Atlanta area. So I want to share with you all my beginning story or my journey to entrepreneurship. And maybe in another episode, I'll talk about my journey that I continue to be on. Because when you're on this journey, it's no ending to it. It's a ever evolving journey. The journey never stops. Anyone that you talk to that's a successful entrepreneur, business owner, they'll tell you, it's a never ending journey. You kind of evolve. So I want to talk to you about my story. And please forgive me if I pronounce some words wrong or you hear me say stuff like, because it's not scripted. I don't plan on editing anything out of these conversations. And I hope you can learn something from my story that may can inspire you. So my beginning journey to entrepreneurship that I can recall started when I was about 10 years old. And at the time, I didn't know it was entrepreneurship. Growing up in New Orleans, Louisiana, my family church was Law Street Baptist Church in the lower Ninth Ward. And of course, it was on Law Street, where the name originated from the street that is located on. And growing up in that church, of course, every Sunday, we would go to Sunday school and church service. My mother would take me. My whole family, like I said, went there. My cousins, my aunts, my grandmother, whole family belonged to that church. And right across the street from that church was a neighborhood corner store, as we say in New Orleans. And every Sunday after church, I looked forward to getting a quarter or a dollar or 50 cents from my mother or from anybody that was willing to give me some money to go buy some candy, buy something from that store. That was the highlight of my Sunday. I think I was more excited about at that time going to the store more than going to the church service itself. And so my grandmother, who was a successful nurse, that's what she did, but she was an all around businesswoman, hustler. She always was doing something to earn some extra money on the side. We used to call my me the bank. You know, if you ever needed some money, need to borrow some money, go talk to the bank. Because my me always had money. And my grandmother used to make these small sweet potato and pecan pies. And also my favorite, which is praline candy or pecan candy, some people may call it. So one day my grandmother made a proposition to me. She said, Tez, I want you to take my pies and pralines, and every Sunday after church, when the people come out from church, you're going to stand right here and you're going to sell my pralines and pies for $1. And she said, for every praline and pie you sell, I'm going to give you a quarter. Now, as a 10-year-old during that time, that was a lot of money. Because back then, you know, in my head, I used to like to buy the big Dale pickles, and it was like 50 cents. So I'm like, if I sell a pie and a praline, I could get me a pickle. Not only that, if I'm able to sell 2 pies and 2 pralines, I could get me a pickle and some chips. Not only that, if I could sell 6, 3 pies, 3 pralines, I could get me a pickle, some chips, and a cold drink. So I was like, bet. And so every Sunday after church, I would stand outside right after church service. And of course, my grandmother was well known in the church community. She was a matriarch. So you know, everybody knew her. Everybody knew my family. So I would stand out. Of course, everybody would come out and I would sell out within a matter of probably an hour. And then I would immediately go across the street to the corner store and give them all my money that I had made. That was my first introduction to entrepreneurship, but not only that, working for a commission, even though I didn't know what that was at that time. And I could remember how happy I felt about making my own money. And so fast forward that when I became a young teenager, I was always looking for ways to earn my own money. So I would do anything legally to make money. I would wash cars, cut grass, clean people's houses, whatever I could do to make some extra money on the side. And so later on, I went to college. And like I said, it still didn't resonate with me during my teenage and younger years, what I was doing, which was starting my journey to entrepreneurship. In my head, I just was hustling. That's what I was doing. I was hustling. That's what That's what we would say in New Orleans, what type of hustle you got going on, right? So that was my hustle, just trying to find things to do, where it was cutting grass, selling my grandmother pies, pressure washing houses, whatever I could do to make money. My senior year in high school, I read a book, and actually it was the first book I ever read from cover to cover. I was a all right student. I was more interested in girls than the books. But the first book that I read, one of my close friends at the time, he's no longer living, he started talking to me about Malcolm X. And so I had to do a book report for Black History Month, and I chose Malcolm X. Now, when I went to buy that book to do my report on, I didn't realize how thick the autobiography actually was. I mean, it was more pages that I have ever read in my life. But as I began to read that book, and if you know the history of Malcolm, his teacher, the man who saved him from living a mischievous life, was a man by the name of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so that led me down another path of finding out who this individual was. And as I began to study and learn about this individual, one of the things that kind of resonated with me was his message of do for self. That in order for African Americans to achieve any type of economic power, we must do for self. Create our own jobs, create our own businesses, turn our hustles into businesses to provide all the services that we needed in order to take care of ourselves and our family. And so when I heard that message, it brought me to another level in my thinking. I went from being a hustler, a legitimate hustler, just finding odd jobs to do. From now, my head began to think of, I have to do something for myself. I have to create a business. I didn't know what type of business I wanted to do at that time. I just was trying a little bit of everything. In fact, I didn't even much know how to start a business. I came from a family, like most my age, where we were taught to go to college, get a good education, and get a good job. That's what was taught to me. And so at this time, I'm in college at the great Southern University of Baton Rouge, playing in the Human Jukebox Band. And all the while, I'm hearing this message of do for self, but I'm in college to get a degree to work a job. And so someone introduced me to network marketing. And I'm quite sure everyone that's listened to this podcast, at some point, if you're an entrepreneur, you got introduced to network marketing, or you got your start in some form of network marketing. Now, network marketing is not a bad thing, and I'm not here to bash network marketing. In fact, network marketing was my introduction to wanting, or learning, I should say, on how to start and open up a business. Because when you're recruited into network marketing, that's one of the things that they say. How would you like to start your own business? Right. And so I have been searching, because I had this message in my head of do for self, start your own business. So the network marketing model appealed to me. And throughout my temporary journey in network marketing, I learned a lot about business. And let me say this: value your journey. Let me say that again. Value your journey. Every stop I made helped me throughout my entrepreneurial process to become a successful business owner. Network marketing gave me the motivation, that extra motivation that I needed to continue to pursue business ownership. Network marketing taught me how to talk to people. Network marketing taught me the importance of having a vision. And if it wasn't because of network marketing, I wouldn't have my insurance license, because it is someone with a network marketing organization that most insurance agents probably have been a part of at some time or approach, that gave me the opportunity and the guidance on how to get my insurance license, which after being part of that network marketing organization for about 5 years, I continued to journey and started on agent. So 2005, Hurricane Katrina happened. And at the time, I was a struggling insurance agent, like most. I was going through some difficulties, challenges. Stopped going to college, which many of my family thought that was a bad idea. Because once again, I come from a family where everyone went to college, everyone went got a job. I had changed my faith on top of that from Christianity to become Muslim, or Islam, I should say, from Christianity to Islam. So that didn't sit with my mother uh, too well at the time. So I had a lot of things going on. My daughter had been born, so that's another thing that was going on in my life. And to be real with you, I really didn't have the money to support at that time her mother, who I was married to, and my daughter, because I was pursuing my dream. And that's a struggle a lot of entrepreneurs go through, particularly if you're a man and you're used to providing for your family. I went from working to provide for my family to no income at all, because I got to the point where I wanted to quit my job, and I did, to pursue my business. In hindsight, I would have did a little bit different. Of course, as you get wiser, you think about some things you could have done a little bit different. But at the time, I was gun ho about my passion and that and what I wanted to do with my life. And a lot of people in my circle, my friends, my family, they just couldn't understand, or they couldn't see the vision of what I was trying to do or create. They supported me, but at the same time, they gave me caution. Like, man, you may want to consider that. So I'm not going to say that my family didn't support me. They really didn't understand. And a lot of times we think that our family don't support us, but really, they really just don't understand. And sometimes when you don't understand something, it's hard for you to support something. It's not for you to take it as some form of diss. A lot of times I hear people say, "Oh, my family don't support me," and they get all upset and angry about it. Instead of looking at it from a different lens, maybe they just really don't understand what you're trying to do. Because my family and friends was conditioned, once again, to go to college, go to trade school, do something, and get a good job. That's what they was conditioned to do. So they didn't quite understand what I was trying to do. And to be frankly, I didn't understand what I was doing either. But some good tea. But I kept on persevering. So in 2005, Hurricane Katrina happened, and I relocated to Atlanta, Georgia. And at that time, Atlanta was booming with the message of entrepreneurship. Of course, many people who moved to Atlanta, they moved to Atlanta because they say it's the black mecca for business owners. And I believe that God do everything for a reason, a divine reason. And for that reason, I landed in Atlanta. Still didn't know what I was doing, what direction I was heading. I knew I wanted to stay in the insurance field, but I had started to contemplate that because once again, I was at that time really on the verge of divorce. And so it was a real tough time for me at that time. So I got a phone call from one of my managers that I worked with, and he had told me that he had just opened up an all-state insurance agency at the time. And so I asked him, I said, "Well, man, I'm down here in Atlanta. Can you point me in the direction who I need to talk to out here?" He had was opening up one in Louisiana. And so he found out who I needed to talk to. I made a couple of phone calls. A woman got back in contact with me. And one of the first questions she asked me, she said, "If we approve you for all state because you have been dislocated due to Hurricane Katrina, you don't know nobody down here, you don't really know the area. How you plan on being successful? Do you plan on going back if we're going to put all this time and resources and energy and approve you to open up your agency? And where you going to get the money from?" And at the time, I didn't have any answers to her question. The only thing that I told her was just please give me an opportunity. So she went on ahead and approved me for the opportunity. And I made a bunch of phone calls asking all my family and friends, "Hey, do you want to invest in this business? I need some money to open up this agency." And so I started my training, and my cousin's husband, who I consider my mentor, who taught me a lot about business, he had just really relocated here. And he said, "Tez, I'll give you the money, man, to help you start that business." And for 5 years, I ran my Allstate agency. And during those 5 years, that's when I began to learn how to turn my hustle into a business. Because prior to that, I really was hustling insurance. I just was just trying to sell insurance to anybody that wanted to hear me talk. And Allstate taught me how to run a business. Like I said early on in this podcast, be grateful for every stop you made along the journey. And it was still tough because I had employees to pay. Now, even though I had someone that helped me, he didn't help me with all the money I needed. And I later on found that out that I needed a lot more money, but I didn't know. But it was still a struggle in running that business because it was the first time I was actually running a business and really didn't understand or what it all entailed. But through those 5 years, I learned a lot of lessons. And y'all, it was a tough 5 years in running a business. I could remember at times I ain't even much have enough to pay my employees payroll and didn't know where the money was going to come from. But thank God, um, from my mentor, Robin. Shout out to Robin, man. Appreciate you. Love you. Thank you uh, for my grandmother. May she rest in peace. My me, which was the bank. And thank you for my lovely soul of a mother, Beverly Bayham Wells Criddle, as she was called, for always supporting me, even though she didn't understand, but always supporting me because I had a lot of tough times. Um, I always tell people I don't really like to talk about the struggles that I went through as an entrepreneur. I try to block those things out of my head so that they don't prevent me from moving forward. But I understand it's important to share my story because many people go through the same thing. I mean, throughout my journey, I have foreclosed on a house when I was going through my journey, got cars repossessed. I can remember being in a house with no heat because I couldn't pay the gas bill, being in a house with no lights, maybe for a day or two because I couldn't pay the light bill, driving around with no car insurance, praying that the police don't pull me over. you know, um, Not even being able to. If my daughter called me that she needed some money for a field trip, not even having the money to do that. I can remember going through all of that stuff. Um, but I was resilient. Some people ask me, man, how did you get through it? And I would truly have to say my faith in God. As a Muslim, we pray 5 times a day. And that's what really kept me going. If I had to contribute to one thing, I would say my faith and just praying to God for direction and guidance every day to give me strength. Just prayer is really what kept me. See, a lot of people look for the secret sauce in entrepreneurship. It ain't no secret sauce. Stop looking for the secret sauce. Stop looking for a way to shortcut the process of the journey. It's no shortcut. If you're not willing to sacrifice nothing, then you just need to get out the game of entrepreneurship. You're going to sacrifice your time. You're going to sacrifice some money. You're going to sacrifice some relationships. You're going to sacrifice some of your sanity. Some people say you got to be a little bit crazy to be an entrepreneur because you're going to sacrifice some of your sanity too. But these days, people don't want to sacrifice nothing. We live in a society where we want everything microwaved. We just want to put it in the microwave, hit 30 seconds, and it pop out just like that. That's not what entrepreneurship is. It doesn't work like that. Now, people could become successful more quickly than I did because back then when I started, we didn't have technology. It wasn't no Facebook, email really wasn't a big thing. I can remember going to my appointments. We didn't have no GPS. I used to have to write down the directions. I didn't have a cell phone, so if I got lost, I had to have a pocket full of quarters so I could call and ask somebody, "Hey, I'm lost. This is where I'm at. Can you guide me in?" So we didn't have all the things back then that many people have today, but it's still a journey. It's still sacrifice that you have to do. And you can't expect for everybody to buy in to your dream. I mentor young men and I tell them all the time, they get mad because all of them, these days everybody want to be an entrepreneur, they want to be a boss, and they get mad when their family don't support it. And I said, your family don't, that's not your family job to fund your dream. Now they may assist in that, but it's their choice not to support it if they don't want to do it. It's your dream. It's your responsibility. It's not their responsibility. It's not what they want to do with their life. In fact, your family may not have the money to support your dream. Most of us come from families where they don't have a lot of money. They're trying to get by too. So you have to be able to sacrifice. Now, how long that's going to take, I can't really tell you. That's the magical question. You may have to sacrifice for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. Who knows? That's the magic question. I wish I would have knew that question when I was going through what I was going through. But you're going to have to sacrifice as you go through your journey of entrepreneurship. And that sacrifice, in the sacrifice, is where the lessons are learned. Let me say that again. In the sacrifice is where the lessons are learned. I learned all my lessons through my failures. And I thank God for my failures, because without those failures, I wouldn't be able to become the successful insurance agency owner that I am today. I wouldn't be able to mentor other individuals if I didn't go through those failures that I went through. So my failures are a big part of my success. So that's a little bit about my story, about my journey as an entrepreneur. And yes, the journey is still going, because it's another side to this journey. You know, once you achieve a certain level of success as an entrepreneur, transitioning from an entrepreneur to a business owner, it opens up a whole another road that you have to travel on. And like I said, we're going to probably share that on another podcast episode. So I hope that you were able to take something from this podcast, something that would help you to keep going no matter what odds are against you. And make sure that you subscribe to this podcast so you can be notified when other future podcasts comes out. Like I said, I plan on having other successful business owners to share their stories and their lessons that can help you throughout your journey as an entrepreneur. And I would like to know, what challenges are you currently facing right now as an entrepreneur? Leave me a comment. So that way, maybe on some of the future episodes that we are going to do, we could talk about some of those challenges and give you some solutions to solve some of those challenges. So I appreciate you all for taking time to listen to me today on my journey, on my story, on entrepreneurship. Until next time, I see you on the next episode. Peace out.